What's up, current and future disc golf addicts? Today I'm going to be taking you along on a round at Lake Stevens Disc Golf Course in Lake Stevens, Washington, most known for its egg baskets. The course itself is going to be relatively short, not quite pitch and putt level, but the real trick here is the baskets, and the big thing about the baskets is that there's a lot of heated debate within the community. It's a love-hate thing. Some people love them, some people hate them. You're seeing petitions on keeping the baskets, and then tons of discourse obviously about also changing the baskets to then a more normal basket. The story, as far as I know, is that it was a dentist actually who designed these baskets and then got them put into the course, who is from Lake Stevens or lives in Lake Stevens himself. But as far as that goes, each basket is unique, where you have the same traditional shape, this egg shape, with 4 pillars that connect at the top and at the bottom. And then the chains themselves are all configured slightly different, to where you have these chains that are intended to catch, but then there are also chains that are intended to block some angles of putts, or at least make them trickier than they would be on a regular basket. And all that really means is that on a shorter course like this, it's going to make you think about your shorter putts a lot more. Now, as you're seeing from the initial couple holes, I started off in the open, but Lake Stevens is a very technical course with lots of trees all around and some elevation, which makes it interesting, and also the possibility of plenty of rollaways. When you add everything together with the unique baskets that they have and the technicality of the tee shots, you do have to play really well. And on most of these holes too, even though they might be short, you think that just get yourself a putt, it really matters what side of the basket you land on. And there's a couple where you're intentionally choosing to go long or stay short and right, for example. I haven't played the course enough to where I would know for certain where the landing spots are on all the holes, or where you're trying, which side of the basket you're trying to land on. There's a couple ones that are easier to remember, but again, this is all theory, and when it comes down to practice and executing it, it's a whole different beast. As we move on to hole 6, another perfect example of the technicality of these shots. With so many trees, you do often see that there's multiple different lines open that you can choose from. Hole 6, my preferred shot is always this flex line, trying to throw a putter or a mid, just depending on how much power I'm wanting to put on the disc. And the key at Lake Stevens really is you don't want to be getting bogeys anywhere. You want to get yourself the pars on all the holes, and because putting is so tricky, you take the birdies that you can, but you can't really count any of them as gimme birdies. Hole 7 being a great example of this, a very tight gap where I'm just trying to throw a forehand hyzer flip with my harp, end up tugging it a little to the left, actually lucky to even push up. And this is one of those courses, again, with that elevation, that I really prefer that putt approach, to where I have a little bit more control over the angle. This one did get away from me a little bit, just putting outside the screen off to the right, but still making my putt nonetheless and taking my par. Hole 8 is debatably one of the signature holes, where you're throwing this uphill tight gap. Again, you can get sneaky as the center of the fairway is relatively open, but once you start approaching towards the basket, there's lots of guardian trees to avoid. Now, what you're not seeing here is that that putt did land on a lot of hyzer and actually ended up rolling really far away, which was unfortunate. Fortunate for me, though, this basket is one of those that doesn't have any blockers and is actually one of the easier ones to putt on, where you have that open line, but just barely off the mark there. tapping in a bogey. Hole 9, a really short hole coming in at just under 160 feet. This is one that I haven't really figured out, although you can attack however you wish. There's so many trees to hit, and I've just never found any level of comfortability with that backhand line. And so I've always tried to kind of cheat the hole and throw a forehand turnover a little bit, and then hope for the best, really. Hole 10, we're now moving to this second half of the course, where the style is going to be a little bit different, to where you're seeing a lot more clearly carved out fairways on these holes, but you still have your guardian trees around the baskets and on the sides of the fairways. But as far as navigating yourself towards the basket, you're not having to intentionally drift a shot that fades back. Hole 11, another example of your multiple options where you do have this direct line straight at the basket, but there is also the sneaky forehand almost skip shot out to the left, where you just throw a standstill from the top right of the tee pad. Now I actually got really lucky here, if I'm not mistaken. That was actually one of the blockers that my disc navigated through, and the blockers themselves are a strange thing to try and manage, where technically your disc can fit through, and if you putt soft enough it can actually rest on the blocker but still technically be inside of the basket. If you putt hard and hit one of the sides of the blockers, it can actually bounce back out, and that's where you're really then struggling to make your putts. Another part that does make these baskets interesting when you're on the putting greens is that since you do have the four supports holding the basket that meet up top, you'll actually intentionally bank putts off of these supports if the chains aren't in an ideal position for you, and so that's an entirely different approach to where you're counting on these bounces in. And in some cases also you might see that the chains aren't necessarily there to help you, but they also might not have blockers, and you're just trying to get the perfect speed on the putt to where you want it to drop in, just as if you were putting on a normal basket with no chains or top. You just want it to drop in flat. Now this hole in particular is one of the more normal baskets. Still in the Lake Stevens fashion, has that egg bottom, but at the top it much resembles a normal basket, and that's actually one that can catch you off guard, especially because you're in a completely different mindset putting for the entire round up to this point, but then this one hole gives you a break. Hole 16, again, you have this traditional hyzer flip or pushing hyzer line out to the right, but since the course has opened up a little bit recently, there's actually another sneaky forehand line out to the left. Again, if you just stand at the top of the tee. Now I've been really pushing myself to try throw more backhands and get more comfortable with these technical backhand lines specifically, and so I've been doing that a lot more, which is why I went with that choice there. Hole 17, a couple of options here. My preferred route has always been pushing a overstable mid on just anhyzer and have it slowly fade back out. Hole 18 and 19, we are going back out into the field, close to where hole 1 was. Hole 18 plays as a big forehand flex line if you want to get it all the way to the basket, and I'm always wanting to do my best to give it a good bid here, especially since that it is ever so slightly downhill, to where if you get that perfect drift line and then fight out at the end, you can actually give yourself a long look. Now unfortunately I did have some technical difficulties while I was playing this, so I actually didn't film hole 19, but of the holes on the course, hole 19 is a relatively straightforward hole, which means I finished at a -4 or 50, which is a new personal best for me. But again, all of Lake Stevens comes down to, can you give yourself some birdie looks and how many putts can you make on these tricky baskets. If you enjoyed what you saw, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for watching.